Welcome back. So in today's video, I want to show you my seed starting setup for 2025, talk about some of the things I do to get ready for each season, talk about some of the changes I'm making this year, and show you some of the varieties that I'm going to be planting. My first step every year is to get everything cleaned up. I tend to not get to this in the fall, so spring is my time. Take a shot back over everything, make sure the flats are clean, make sure the trays are clean, and get the overall seed starting areas set up. I have two shelving units. They're each 2 foot by 4 foot. They have 4 shelves, and each shelf has 2 shop lights. Each is about 5,500 lumens, so that gives me about 10 or 11,000 lumens total. One of the things that I'm doing differently this year is I'm actually planting my seeds about a month later. I found last year that when I planted towards the end of January, I'm in zone 4B, that they really didn't take off until they got outside. They got that afternoon sun, they got the heat, the breeze in the greenhouse, and really hardened off. So this year I'm planting everything start of March, middle of March. I am planting some new varieties, so I'm excited about that. This is one of them, King Sieg, and this is another one called Streisen. I did plant both of those last year, but they were at the very end of the season, and by the time they did anything, the season was over, and they really hadn't done a whole lot of anything. Another change I'm making this year is to plant everything in smaller trays, or I guess smaller cells. These are 128 cell trays. I'm planting all of my leeks, onions, shallots, and even some of my peppers and tomatoes in these. I found in the past that the more space I give the plants, the more problems I get, especially early in the season. I want the roots obviously to grow down, and I also want to be able to provide as much light and heat and whatever else that I need. And since space is at a premium, putting them in these smaller trays or smaller cell trays tends to work out a little bit better. Most of the onion varieties I'm planting this year are the same as last year. I really didn't keep track enough of what worked and what didn't, so I don't want to make a change until I really know what I like. Probably the most drastic change I'm making to this year's garden is that I'm growing fewer varieties of things like peppers and tomatoes, but I'm growing larger quantities. In the past, I've kind of just planted a bunch of stuff, filled up the number of trays based on how many I think I'm going to maybe need, and I really haven't planned it that carefully. This year, I decided I wanted to plan it carefully. I wanted to assign locations for my red mercury tomatoes, for my little finger eggplants, for the Turkish orange eggplants. I wanted to plan where those plants were going to go, based obviously on anticipated need. There's things that we enjoy eating and cooking and preserving more than others. There's things that I don't really know if I need more. So if I have a more methodical way to go about that, I think it'll give me better results in the long term. It took a lot of time. There were a lot of hours spent this winter just figuring out how many plants can I put in that bed and what variety do I want 24 plants of versus 12. The green paper that you're seeing here, I have one of those for every single flat. I can tell you what's planted. I'm keeping track of the germination rates. I'm also then going to trace that throughout the garden over the course of the summer. I'd like to be able to say what varieties do their best, how we use them, and do I have the quantities that I need for the preserving that I want to do and the overall self-reliance goals that I've set for this year. The last big change I made for 2025 is flowers. I planted a lot of flowers last year. I will be honest, I didn't really have a plan for most of them. This year I have a plan, kind of like the tomatoes and the peppers. My plan this year is to know how many individual plants I need, and that's also been planned based on where I want to put them. My plan this year is to use flowers as borders and as separators between beds. So I'm planting things that are pollinator friendly. I'm also planting things that I know we enjoy, colors that we like, things that I think will make the garden a lot more vibrant, a lot more colorful, and hopefully give an aesthetic appeal in that early part of the season when the plants aren't really growing. So you'll still get that colorful look to the garden. Obviously, because I use weed block fabric, there's a lot of just dullness to that. So I'm hoping that this method works a little bit for that. I'm planting a lot of daisies. I'm planting a lot of marigolds. And then I've thrown in some other things like lavender, some yarrow, some of those things that I think will be interesting additions to the garden. So my total ended up being just less than 2,500 plants. About half of these are in my basement. Those are going to be the flowers in the cool weather. And about half of them went upstairs. I have a lot more heat up there, obviously warmer. And now we wait. A lot of stuff germinated very quickly. I was really impressed with that. I think my light situation this year is a lot better than it's ever been. I've also been a lot more careful making sure that I'm watering properly. I'll talk about some of those things in a future video. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned from it. If you have questions, comments, ideas, suggestions, please let me know. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you on the next one.